I'm Shubhrakant Chadangi from Books Group of Companies. Professor Govindarajan said about innovation being a non-linear thinking. My small submission in the form of a question is that would it not be right for us to use the word change rather than innovation, where change is a neutral, because sometimes even a traditional thinking, a small change, which need not be an innovation, which need not be something different from what we think, could bring in some more improvements, some more improvements in the system. Because if the system is a living system, then it will automatically, every change, whether it be for good or bad, it will automatically lead to a innovation through feedback.
Right. Thank you very much.
I would tend to agree with what you're saying. In some sense, the way I look at it is really kind of fundamental breakthrough innovation really happens in small steps. But you must have a big dream, a view of the future, and then you take a lot of small steps. Those small steps may look like almost evolutionary change, but what you're trying to do is to drive the system towards more of a fundamental change.
Arun Puri from India Today. I want to ask Nandna, in fact. The IT industry has done a fabulous job for the country. It's breathtaking, the kind of growth you get in terms of turnover, profits, and it's wonderful. I mean, it's something which we all look in awe with. What I've always wondered is the kind of intellectual capital you have and the kind of organization you run. In the end, you are still service providers. Why is it that we have not copyrighted, created packages of our own which belong to you, labeled as Infosys? Why haven't we created a Microsoft in India? Why haven't we created a Google in India? Why have we not created products which we own? You surely have the intellectual capital. You surely have the management skills. And it applies not only to you, it applies to all the IT industry. This is something which is always puzzling me.
Yeah. First of all, I think that's not happened. I think there are many examples, including iFlex, Finacle at Infosys, which are actually international products. But I think, Arun, the basic concept of what constitutes a product itself is changing. And increasingly, is Google a product? It's not a product in that sense. It's a service, right? I mean, you go up on the web and you key in something and you get an answer. So it's clearly a service. So increasingly, the boundaries are blurring between products and services. Ultimately, your intellectual capital can come from a product, your intellectual capital can come from a service, your intellectual capital comes from your business model. We believe that a lot of our intellectual capital actually comes from the way we do things, our business model. And I think today in a lot of product businesses, actually you have very low growth because products are now maturing. So I think we have, I believe, done the right thing in, there is tremendous amount of intellectual capital in what we do. I mean, just to give an idea, we at Infosys we get about 1.4 million applications a year. We select about 20,000 people. To hire, to process 1.4 million applications, select 20,000 people, train them in the right technology, and really build a scalable global model to execute projects in the identical way actually requires enormous amounts of intellectual capital. So there is a lot of that, except that the way we deliver it is slightly different. So I think I'm not that disheartened saying that products is something higher than services. I think it's all part of the same continuum. It's just that what is the segment you choose to be? I mean, Microsoft chooses to be in the operating system space. Intel chooses to be in the chip space. Dell chooses to be in the computer space. You don't go and ask Dell, why do you want to develop an operating system? Because the model is not about developing operating system. The model is about selling PCs. So I think we have selected, I think rightfully the right space where we can be globally competitive. I think it's made a huge impact. And now as we go further up the value chain, we will use intellectual property to package services in a repeatable fashion. And that will be what we would call as products.
Please. Yeah.
Professor Govindarajan, well, I would need a couple of minutes. I'll first ask you the question, and also annotate it a little so that you get it better. When are you going to begin advising governments, not just the union government, but state governments in India, on policy innovations? Why I say this is because the context is very recent. Here we are talking about being nimble and fleet-footed and looking at the future. You have an Indian Evidence Act of 1861 vintage. My old law professor at the academy where I trained after I got into the service used to tell me that, world over, in the field of jurisprudence, this was one act which remains absolutely unchanged. And, people used to take pride in that. And what is it fundamentally premised on? The Indian Evidence Act. You've seen the Jessica Lal murder case. Evidence recorded by the police, sorry, not evidence, but statement recorded by the police is not admissible as primary evidence or evidence that can be conclusive in the court. And what was this premised on? It was premised on the belief of our colonial rulers that the natives cannot be trusted. And therefore, the native policemen cannot be trusted. The magistrates and the judges, most of them were Britishers. And we did not change this. 1861, 1961, close to 150 years. So, when you have two sectors or two segments within the same system moving at different paces, you have dissonance. I'm sure as a management expert you accept this. So we have the corporate
Thank
sector
you.
where we are talking
Thank you.
about being
Thank you very much. I think the point is well made. I think Govind being Govind, he has understood what you are trying to raise. Please.
Perhaps there are others who can comment on this. I would say this. The two levels I can answer. One is I find the Indian economy and its greatness is really predicated on the entrepreneurial class. And therefore, in some sense, our progress so far has been despite our government. And in some sense, going to the future, I say the biggest responsibility and biggest ownership of this is going to be amongst the entrepreneurs like the Nandans. Now, coming to the state government, I look at the e-Seva project that Mr. Chandrababu Naidu started in Hyderabad, in Andhra Pradesh, as really a box 3 innovation to an important issue that he tried to deal with. Therefore, I'm sure there are lots of other pockets of innovation, but you may be right. There are places where we really have been frozen in the past. Maybe we need to make progress there as well.
I'm Vivi Shadangi from Books Group. I have a question to both of you. Personally, I feel the internet is going to be one of the biggest happenings of the years to come. I also feel within another few, say 2-3 decades or 4 decades, paper is having its way out. I also feel that there will be free trade throughout the whole world, and that will be purely because of internet. I also feel that another 30 years or 35 years or maybe 40 years, probably there will be a one currency throughout the world, or maybe full convertibility of almost all the currencies. Now that is my belief. Just I wanted to validate and understand your opinion on this. Thank you very much. It is both to both of you, of course.
Well, certainly I think a lot of the factors that you mentioned are creating the global structures for frictionless capitalism, or whatever you want to call it, which is really, you have perfect markets, you have free flow of information and so on. But I think there are two things which impede, 2 or 3 things that impede that. One is, I think nationalism and you're seeing a lot of that today in the world where countries, though they know in their hearts that these are inevitable forces, try to stop this thing happening. And I think nationalism and national protectionism will always be there to act as one impedance towards all this. And the second, I think, is going to be, fears on security, which are going to. So I think while technology and all those things will do what you say, I think, nations and other things will act as impedances. So it's not a done deal that this is going to automatically create friction-free capitalism or friction-free globalization. It's going to be somewhere in between based on how people respond to that.
If I may just add to what Nandna is saying, another perspective I have is, I think globalization, free trade, and so on and so forth are happening. We can never stop it. It's just a force which, it's like, debating globalization is like debating the merits of gravity. We should stop doing that, but rather saying, how can we harness globalization for the benefit of everybody? But having said that, I would say we in India must preserve our culture in the process of innovation. By that I mean, if you let Walmarts of the world come in here freely and destroy all our mom and pop stores. I remember growing up in India, going to that little corner store and drinking a cup of tea. That was sort of a symbol of India. And in some sense, perhaps this India Today Conclave, in the next time, they need to have a session focused around what defines India and Indian culture. I'm just going back to Queen Jordan's remark yesterday. She said, you have to understand who you are, and that gives you confidence about facing the world. Therefore, we must in India never give up who we are in the process of embracing globalization, in the process of innovation.
Thank you.
I'm Jayesh Sheth from Bombay KC Group of Companies. We have been the direct recipient of what Mr. Nilekani said and the stock markets. And the way I did business 5 years ago and the way I do it today is a sea change. I couldn't have believed I'm in the same business. My question is to you, sir. And world over, and especially in the US, they have huge think tanks which are promoted by private entrepreneurs to do a lot of innovative thinking for their government and for the entrepreneurs themselves. In India, I don't see any big houses promoting that kind of think tanks. Do you or anybody else have those ideas in mind?
No, I think it's beginning to happen. I think, if you go back and look at the history of the United States, a lot of these think tanks were promoted in the early 20th century by, businessmen of that era, people like Rockefeller, Ford, Edward Filene, and they created, Brookings. They all created these great think tanks. I think it's happening. I've seen many initiatives where people are going to do that. So I think it's just a matter of time. Because I think historically in post-independence India, the think tanks were also ex-government bureaucrats or something. So it didn't really make sense. But I think with more private money coming in and more people understanding that they also need to have autonomous, high-integrity think tanks that generate truly good public policy, I think you will see more of that happening.
Do you believe that creativity, innovation can be taught and techniques to teach it? Would it be helpful in schools and in organizations? And can that improve the general level of creativity and innovation in an organization?
Let me give you an answer this way. I make a distinction between creativity and innovation. Innovation is the ability to commercialize creative ideas. Now, the question you're asking is, can creativity be taught? I absolutely believe so. And I think the Indian education system that I went through certainly had nothing to do with creativity. It's about rote memorization of things that the professor said in class, and perhaps it has evolved some. I continue to believe, I think we need to reinvent our education system all the way from the first grade onwards to really promote critical thinking, questioning, debates, dialogues, etc. Creativity can be taught. And I think in some sense that may be one area where we need to relook at our education system and see how do we fundamentally transform that.
Thank you very much. I have a little note here saying Mr. Nikani will ask the next question.
No, sorry. Excuse me, sir. Here I am.
Oh, okay.
This side.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. I've been trying to ask the question. This is for, my name is Rohini Nilekani, and the question is addressed to you, sir, Mr. Govindarajan, but maybe Nandna wants to also take it. From what I've been hearing the two of you saying is that to make innovation happen, that pyramid of think, make sure, and do doesn't work so well if that's not the right way for a corporation or a government to function. But from what we heard yesterday about China, that's exactly how China functions. And from what I hear from Nandan, open society, diversity, this, that, and the other, is very important for innovative practices to flourish. So now, based on that, is China an aberration? Is it temporary? How come China knows how to innovate, how to copy, how to scale up, how to bring in new ideas, etc., etc.? Is it that this is just a temporary boom about to go bust? Or is it that China has developed a new theory or practice? Has it innovated a new theory of innovation?
It's a great
That's a
question.
very good question. Yes, Govind.
Let me give you an answer which obviously time can tell. I believe China is a bubble. And in some sense, if I look at the next 25 years, I believe India will overtake China. And one of the issues that you pointed out is, I believe ultimately, unless there is free speech, freedom of thinking, that's the basis for intellectual ferment. Therefore, creative ideas happen only under that system. Therefore, to that extent, that provides one constraint. But that's not the only issue. But if you also take a look at demographics in China, it is the fastest aging society. With one-child policy, I believe there is fewer people who are going to be there to take care of those older folks who lack social pension and other kinds of things. Therefore, there's a huge social cost that economy has to bear going forward. So, and therefore, I mean, there's a variety of reasons in my mind. I think the model is not a sustainable model. And what they have shown so far is not based on breakthrough innovation. It's based on sort of catching up. Can they go ahead is the question.
Nandan, will you like to respond to Rohini's question now or later?
No, I think it's a very good question. And well, I think the challenge in India is execution. It's not ideas. We have lots of ideas, but execution is poor. Whereas in China, I think execution is very good. And as Dr. Govindarajan said, the advantage that China and even India have is that there is a complete disequilibrium between what society knows are progress and what these countries have, and therefore it's relatively easy to scale it up just by copying or by bringing in best practices from outside, which is what they're doing. But certainly, I think in the long run, if there's true innovation required, I don't think you can have true innovation without an open society.